So let's get to brass tacks, y'all. One of the questions that many people want to know is, why is Boston Whaler so expensive? I mean, you go online, you search, people want to know. And that's not just Boston Whaler, it's other lines, but people want to know, why is Boston Whaler so expensive? Now, I have Clay Holcomb, who is the operations manager of Chesapeake Boat Basin here in Kilmarnock, Virginia. He's with me. He's one of the most honest dudes I know in this industry. He calls it like it is, but also he knows so much. He owned this marina for 25 years?
Just 24.
Yeah, 24 years. All right, and now he's getting ready to go cruise up and down the Intercoastal, it looks like, which is great for you. I'm excited for you, but he's sharing his knowledge with us before he takes off to the Wild Blue yonder. With that being said, let's talk about this conversation that people want to know. If you had somebody comes to you and says, why is Whaler so expensive? What are some of the reasons you're going to give to them?
Well, first off, everything's cheaper by the dozen. So if they want to save some money, all you got to do is just buy more from us. So anyway, yes, we get that question a lot too when we go to boat shows. And before I get into it, I will say this. I like to go to the Lauderdale Boat Show.
Yep.
I went to Lauderdale last year, and I do it more just to keep myself up with what's going on, what's going on in the market. And I will say this, I was surprised at how many more entry-level brands, the more value brands, their prices have increased significantly.
Nobody wants to sell a boat anymore that's less than $100,000.
Fortunately, it's gotten to that point.
And let me just say this. I know you're going to answer the question. One thing that impresses me about Whaler is that you still offer boats like the Super Sport that are not, you have entry-level boats. And I think that's important to grow the industry, because otherwise you price out, the common man, if you will. All right, so let's talk about that though.
So typically, yes, a Whaler does carry a little bit higher price tag, but there is reason for it.
Okay.
And most of it's going to be in the manufacturing process. That's really where the extra money is coming on. So I'll talk a little bit about boat manufacturing and what Whaler has to do different because of their construction.
All right.
Well, as we all know, Whaler is the unsinkable legend. And the way they do that is their boats are foam injected with foam. And that's a whole other story we can get into.
You can explain as much of it as you want, because anything that helps them understand the price tag is going to be good for this video.
I know you and I got together at another time and we did a whole video on that foam injection, which would probably be great for people to see. You want to kind of put the two and two together. But when Whaler goes through that process of foam injection, that foam is expanding, okay? So it's trying to break everything apart. So because of that, the molds that Whaler uses, it's not a typical boat mold. You can't just build a mold out of plywood and fiberglass and think you're going to inject it. If you did, you'll end up with a great big football. So their molds are substantially more expensive to construct, to be able to handle the pressures that these boats go under while they're being made. They're actually surrounded by steel. If you saw them, they're literally steel cages around these molds that help hold these molds together as the injection process is going.
So unlike some boats, I couldn't just take off this top. Actually, couldn't just remove this if I had to.
Well, this boat's got what's also called a liner. So this is actually a three-piece.
Okay.
But when it was started, you have your hull, you have your upper hull that once it's molded together becomes one piece. And then the part we're standing on, what you look at, this is what's called the liner.
Okay. Right.
So this gives us the pretty factor.
Yep.
Okay, this is what you see. This is where your rod holders go. But under this is a upper and lower one-piece unibody hull that this liner is just sitting on. So as far about cost, the cost of production to build a Whaler, it just costs more.
Okay.
The foam costs more. The process takes longer, meaning that they can't pump as many boats out,
Right.
It's a lower production on this model, where another company might be to lay a mold up, let it sit overnight or for a couple of days, however long it takes. Next day, they're popping that hull out and they're laying up another one. Whaler's got to put the two pieces together. It's actually two molds.
Okay.
They go together like this.
Yep.
They're then clamped together, and that boat's got to go sit. It's got to go cure completely.
Oh, okay.
So that mold
is different.
That mold is completely tied up for, honestly, I don't know how long it's tied up, but I remember going to the factory, we talked about this. So that mold's tied up. So they may have more than 1, 2, 3, 4 molds for the same hull, where another boat manufacturer producing maybe the same size boat will have half the number of molds.
Yeah.
Because they can pop them out quicker.
Yeah.
That just adds cost. Anytime we're buying the most expensive molds you can buy, and we can't use them as fast. They also have a higher wear factor because of that compression, because of all that force that it's trying to fight. Over time, they're going to wear out.
The molds. And for those that, like I've owned a fiberglass swimming pool manufacturing company, right? And so mold maintenance is actually a huge deal. You have to consistently take them what's called offline. You have to make repairs because every time you're shooting the glass against a mold, you're damaging the mold in that process, and there's a separation that has to occur, and so there's literal damage, and so there's constant upkeep. And one of the big divides with anything to do with fiberglass is how well do the manufacturers upkeep the molds, and it affects downtime and production time and all these things that you just talked about. Yeah.
So that's a big part of the cost of a Boston whaler that's really different from, as far as I know, everybody.
Okay.
You know, I don't know anybody else. There may be.
Yeah, and look, in the comment section, let us know if somebody else is doing this. The point is, it's atypical. It's rare in the industry.
Very, very rare, and it just costs more to produce.
Right.
The next step is, because it is a Boston whaler is a premium brand.
Yep.
So what that means is every accessory they're going to put on the boat is going to be of premium quality. Our stainless steel is going to be the best quality stainless steel.
Which there is just so you're aware, if you don't know this, there's a huge difference in stainless steel out there.
Huge difference.
It's night and day from some brands to the other.
And I'm not going to say the Boston whaler stainless steel is the best stainless steel on the planet, because it's not. You know, there's grades made for the oil refining industry that are even higher than that, but that's not typical in the boat business.
Right.
So as far as boat stainless steel, let's say, they use some of the best stuff they can find. You know, they're gel coats. They've got UV inhibitors in them just to try to help keep the luster up. You know, there's a lot of little extra steps like that they have to do. Now, another area that no one ever thinks about is after the sale.
It's a good point.
One reason why a whaler can cost a little bit more is the manufacturer does a lot for us. They stand behind the customer better than anyone manufacturer I've ever dealt with. If there's an issue, they want it handled. They want it handled right away, and they want it handled right.
So you're saying that's not the same across the board with all the manufacturers?
Unfortunately, no. Not even close. And I've sold other boat lines, and I've gotten rid of boat lines because of that. I've seen too many customers get hung out in the wind when they've had a problem, and whalers like take care of them. That costs money too. Not only does it cost money on the manufacturer's side, it costs money as the dealer. You know, it costs money for me to be able to give the level of service that the manufacturer is demanding from me. Tooling, trucks, labor cost, all that stuff goes up, okay? However, nice thing about a Boston whaler, probably got in its class, I would argue, the highest resale value of anything in its class.
It is crazy that you can get a Montauk today that's 20 years old, and you can sell it for more than the person bought it for.
How many boats do you see running around that are made back from the 60s?
Yeah.
And we see it all the time. People have got their Montauk. My grandfather had this, it went to my dad, now it's mine, I'm gonna give it to my kids.
Yeah.
You know, they may have gone through 3 or 4 engines.
Sure.
But the boat hull's still there.
Yeah, I mean, there's like a few brands out there. Like I think clearly Whaler is like the top, I would say 3 for resale. Maybe a Regulator is a top 3. Maybe a Grady. Like those are the ones that come to mind in terms of resale percentage of what you initially spent.
That's correct. And that's another thing I tell people a lot of times too. People don't buy boats, society doesn't buy things anymore to keep them forever.
Right.
People always want something new. They want something great. A lot of people, they'll look at a boat. It's $400,000. They're like, oh my God, 400 grand. The boat didn't cost you 400,000. You may have paid 400,000 for it, but you're only going to keep it for 3 to 5 years, and you're going to sell it.
Yep.
The more money you can get, the cost of ownership is really what you bought it for compared to what you sold it for.
That's a good point.
So the more money you keep in your pocket, the less that boat costs you in the long run. Now, if you're going to buy a $400,000 boat and keep it for 30 years, that's a different story.
Different game. Yeah, different game.
It can last 30 years. So
yeah.
So there's a trade-off there. But real quick to answer your question, cost of construction, materials used, and the backing by the manufacturers and the dealers is why they do demand a little bit higher premium than most. But you get it back in quality, usability, and resale value.
Yeah, that was really great, Clay, and hopefully it was good for you. It's helped me, and make sure you watch that other video that we have about how these are foamed and that whole construction process is very, very educational for me. Again, we hope this has helped you. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, leave a comment in the comment section. Let us know your questions about Whaler. And until the next time, everyone, stay salty.